you know what, we've only been waiting since 2018. The day has finally happened. If you've got children, grandchildren, or I would argue, actually, if you care about basic reality and truth, then this is an issue which would concern you, because finally schools have received some guidance about what on earth to do when it comes to what they're now calling gender questioning children. Let me just pop up on the screen just a statement, a graphic that outlines the approach that the government would say that they have actually taken when it comes to this matter. What they would say is they want to safeguard the welfare of children with a cautious approach, ensure that parents are involved in decisions about their children's lives, protect single-sex spaces such as toilets, showers and changing rooms, confirm that biological sex is fundamentally important when it comes to fairness in competitive sport, and confirm that there is no general duty to allow a child to socially transition. That last one, if you ask me, is a very key one. Harriet, where are you on this?
Well, I'm absolutely for this. I mean, finally, now this isn't law, it's just guidelines, but finally we've got some compassionate, common sense advice to schools. But what's so extraordinary is that we have needed to get compassionate and common sense advice, and that this seems to be the position that became so extreme in schools that we've had to have this. I mean, it was so extreme that the idea that parents should be involved in decisions that were going to have a long-term impact on their children's physical and emotional and mental well-being was thought bizarre. That the idea that that boys who've gone through puberty should be playing sport with with girls was thought that was thought bizarre if you were against that. And I think we have to remember in all of this that we're dealing with teenagers, and teenagers love to try different things out. They love to experiment, and they love sometimes to experiment too dangerously and be too wild. But as adults, our job is to make sure that they experiment safely, so that, for example, we don't allow young people to drink or go into nightclubs till they're 18. We don't allow them to have sex till they're 16. So why are we allowing them to take these extraordinary decisions that are going to have such impact for the rest of their life without a lot of thought and safeguarding?
Jo?
Well, I can't really see why this guidance has been delayed for such a long time, because it's pretty much common sense. And most of it is what good schools are doing anyway. Good school leaders will be having a conversation with their pupils and, when appropriate, with the parents. Now, they may, there are extreme cases where the child might be at risk for whatever reason, and no teacher is going to put a child at risk by doing that. But, we send our children to school for a large chunk of their lives. We are giving teachers that in loco parentis. We are basically handing over the responsibility from us as parents to the teachers. So I think we need to respect and trust teachers and actually accept that most teachers and most schools do a good job. And most teachers would want to say, OK, so Harriet, you want to be called Harry and la la la, let's talk to mum and dad about it, or whatever. It's a sort of stating the bleeding obvious in a way, this thing. But in a way, it's good clarification for teachers who are worried that they're going to be criticised or worse, penalised. If you give out the guidelines, it sort of makes it a little bit clearer for everybody, which has got to be a good thing.
Well, I can tell you now, there's a lot of people that are quite unhappy about this. For example, Stonewall, they say this does not put the interests of children first. It's not fit for purpose. They're saying that trans children are all of a sudden regarded as a contested belief. They liken it to Section 28, which many of you perhaps will be familiar with, when it was basically said that you can't encourage, I put that in quotes, people being gay, essentially. Now, to join me to have this conversation, Peter Tatchell, the human rights campaigner, joins me. Good evening to you. What do you think to this guidance that's been shared today?
The first thing to state is that in the overwhelming majority of cases, teachers, parents and children work together to discuss these issues. Nearly always, when a child is socially transitioning, they do so with the support of their parents, and their parents consult with the school consults with the parents. So this is a bit of a storm in a teacup over a very tiny minority of cases. The other point to make is that social transitioning, which is what these guidelines are talking about, does not involve hormones or surgery. It's simply someone adopting a preferred trans name and pronoun and maybe dressing in their trans identity. That's all. It's all reversible. It's all changeable. It's nothing that's going to affect the person for the rest of their life. And as we've heard, young people do experiment. They try something for a few weeks or a few months. If they don't like it, they revert back.
Yeah, but would you concede, though, that if a child, Michelle, suddenly decides that they want to be called Michael, they want to do all these things to the way that they appear, to be called him and all the rest of it, do you concede that that is perhaps the first step onto a pathway that would then be medicalised?
Well, it could be, but not necessarily. You know, there's plenty of examples of young people who have, for a period, socially transitioned, and then after a time decided, no, it's not for them. I always believe that young people should be spoken to, should be questioned, that they should be counseled and supported to determine whether their feelings are genuine and whether they're sincere. But I think we should always assume that they are initially. But there's nothing wrong with asking young people and consulting with parents. And I think most parents, in my experience, the trans kids I know, their parents are fully behind them and have been liaising with the school from the get-go.
Do you think there should ever be a scenario, though, where a child, for example, does decide that they are not the so-called gender that they think they are, they want to be something else? Do you think they should ever be allowed to do that without the parent knowledge?
Well, I think in extreme cases, if their parents are far-right extremists or religious fundamentalists who may subject their child to emotional, psychological, or even physical abuse, then it would be wrong for the school to inform the parents. And there have been a small number of cases where that has happened, where young kids have been horribly abused by their parents, and in some cases even attempted to take their own lives because of parental abuse. The parents have not accepted them as being trans. And I think in those circumstances, the school has to be cautious. And that's what the guidelines say. The guidelines do say that in these extreme circumstances, the child's welfare comes first. And that is the right approach.
Indeed. I just want to ask you quickly, because I do need to, just for time reasons, I need to move on. I'm interested, though, your first response there is if their parent is far right. I mean, these days, if you have the audacity to say that you want controlled immigration, you're deemed as far right. So the first notion that you present back to me is if your parent's far right, then, yeah, let's keep it a secret from them. I would actually push back on that. This far right notion is completely overused, and I would say it's complete nonsense in most of the cases.
Well, it may be, but again, I have heard of examples of parents who have quite extreme right-wing views, quite intolerant, who have given their trans children absolute hell and actually caused the child great psychological and emotional damage. And in one case, actually physically beaten their child to try and beat out the trans from them. And that is a form of child abuse, and it's not acceptable. Even if the parents object to it, they don't have a right to beat their children or subject them to psychological and emotional abuse. But I'm not saying that all right-wing people are like that. I'm not saying that.
Good. OK, all right. Well, we completely agree that no parent should absolutely be battering or abusing their child for any reason. So on that, thank you for your time. That's Peter Tatchell.